Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Markos. Christopher Nolan's film The Odyssey has surpassed 700 million in the global box office, with numbers continuing to rise, but most who have seen the film know little about the original work. I'd like to examine Homer's classic through Christian eyes, especially with Louis Markos. Dr. Louis Markos, professor of English at Houston Christian University, authority on C.S. Lewis apologetics, ancient Greece and Rome, and he lectures widely for classical Christian and classical charter schools and conferences. Louis, it's great to speak with you again. How are you?
Hey, thanks for having me back on, Marcus.
It's been a while. It's been, when speaking with you, I think I go a little too long between time, but it's always a joy to reconnect with you. The first thing I want to ask is, I was informed that you watched the movie.
I did.
I have not, and given that I have very young children at home, the odds of going out to watch a movie are nigh impossible. So, you want to share with our listeners what to think of the movie?
I got to tell you, it's really not woke. I mean, you've got the DEI casting, but Helen of Troy is in the movie so short, you don't even realize it. And, you know, having the transgender actor, I mean, she's in it so short, and if you didn't know who she was, you just think she was this wimpy-looking little soldier. It really, oddly enough, I think the problem with it is it's just dull. That's the problem with it. The screenplay, the dialogue is too modern-sounding. There's no real epic sense. But I still think most Christians should see it because it does affirm, okay, in ancient Greece, if you read the Odyssey, the central theme of the Odyssey is xenia, Xenia, also known as the guest-host relationship. The central ethos in the Odyssey is you have to be a good host and a good guest. And when you are a good host and a good guest, things go well. When you violate that sacred relationship, like in Sodom and Gomorrah, when you violate the sacred relationship, it always leads to disaster. Now, oddly, Christopher Nolan, who is not a Christian as far as I know, instead of calling it xenia or the guest-host relationship, he calls it Zeus's law. Now, that's correct. Zeus is also known as Zeus Xenos. That means Zeus, the guest god. So, but it's interesting that he calls it that, and he defines it as basically do unto others as you would have them do unto you, the golden rule of Jesus. Now, the two fit together. I mean, they're pretty similar to one another, but it's very interesting that he puts that at the center. That's good. And he shows that when that is violated, it leads to disaster. So in that sense, it does affirm what real tradition and honor mean. It does ultimately affirm family, his desire to come home and be reunited. So at its core, it does have a pretty conservative message, and it shows what happens. Now, what's odd about it is instead of focusing on what the story focuses on, he puts all the focus on the Trojan horse, which is barely mentioned in the Odyssey, actually. But he sees that the treachery of the Trojan horse leads to the destruction of the great Mycenaean Bronze Age, the age of Troy and of Agamemnon. So in that sense, it is very, very accurate, but it's just odd how he presents it. The other thing quickly is that basically Odysseus is a soldier with PTSD. Basically, he is in a sense of guilt throughout the whole movie, which makes him a rather uninteresting character.
Wow.
But at least there is a sense of morality, Marcus, here. It is not woke in the sense that I feared it would be.
I'd heard a few criticisms. I heard a few people say they thought it was okay. I know the book, clearly, and I don't know anything about the movie. And just given your comments, the first thing that came to mind is, wow, you really have to work hard to make the Odyssey dull.
I know. I don't know what it was. I mean, it's very noble that Christopher Nolan wants to do no CGI. He wants what you call practical effects. In other words, you have to do them with sets and things. And the Cyclops looks like a big dumb puppet. I mean, I couldn't believe, to me, how dull that was. He's good at set pieces, like the cave is really scary and dark, and the big hand pulling somebody up, and we even see him eating the guy and all. But the weird thing is that what Odysseus is known for is his cleverness. People that have read the Odyssey, though, what you remember the most in the Odyssey is the cave of the Cyclops, where Odysseus tricks the Cyclops.
Right.
He tells the Cyclops, "My name is nobody." And after he blinds him, he says, "My friends, help me, nobody has put out my eye." They take all the cleverness away from Odysseus. And so, and also, you see, it's very, very odd, Marcus. Okay, he is right that the Trojan horse is a breach in Xenia, but it's not presented that way. It's presented that way in the tragedy of Aeschylus, called the Oresteia. It's presented that way in the Aeneid, partly. But in the Odyssey, oddly enough, the central point is the reason everything goes bad for Odysseus is that when he goes to the cave of the Cyclops, he is a bad guest. He immediately starts helping himself to everything, and he waits for the host to come back because he wants him to give him a big gift. Now, the host is supposed to give you a gift, but you're not there to extort the gift. I mean, this is, this is how you hold civilization together. But that doesn't happen. Here, he walks in and has a bite of cheese and then stops. Then what happens, again, oddly taken out of the movie, so he's breached Xenia, and it's going to lead to problems. But then, as he's leaving, as he's escaping, the Cyclops starts throwing boulders at him, which they left out too, which is so exciting. And then Odysseus, in a stupid moment, says, "Oh, Cyclops, if anybody asks who put out your eye, tell him it's Odysseus, son of Laertes, city sacker." And he foolishly gives his identity, which allows the Cyclops to put a curse on him that follows him the whole epic. They oddly, very oddly, leave that out, especially since the whole thing is so dramatic and perfect for a movie. I mean, the old cheap movie with Kirk Douglas from the 50s is more exciting, the way it does the Cyclops than this one. I don't understand why, really. They have, come interesting things. The Lestrygonians are these giants that chase them down, and that's pretty. He does Circe turning the men into pigs, which is an extremely disturbing scene. I'm not sure what I think about it yet. It's like we see her pulling their ears and sticking her hand down their mouth and remolding them. It's a very, very strange moment. But, most of the set pieces are there. It's very exciting, but we've got a very glum Odysseus. Everybody is sort of under. I wasn't actually impressed by any of the acting. It wasn't exactly bad. It was just underacted. He wanted to make it seem more modern, which is okay, but there was no gravitas in the language. It was just quotidian, just everyday and ordinary, which, again, I'm not sure why they did that. Now, oddly, he wanted to be accurate, so he got rid of the rich orchestral score, which makes epics come alive, like Ben-Hur or The Lord of the Rings, and he gives us contemporary instruments, which sometimes is kind of neat. In the action scenes, we hear the drums, and that's kind of cool, but I don't understand why you would go to such extremes to get realistic contemporary music, music of the time, and then give us dialogue, which is just dull and has no epic grandeur to it at all. It's very odd. I mean, it's still worth seeing. It's a 3-hour movie. It didn't have to be that long. And it does most of the epic. And again, it does have a central message that I think Christians can agree with. I've heard people argue that it's too Christian because he tries to make it the golden rule rather than what the Greeks believe, which is kind of an odd thing. Also, what's odd, Marcus, and interesting is he gives us the gods, but he doesn't give us the gods. Like the gods aren't really there. The monsters are there. He keeps seeing Athena, which is kind of a strange thing. I won't give it away, but he kind of almost undoes the very thing he does with the gods. And so it's weird. It's like...
So it doesn't open on Olympus?
Gods, but we do at the same time. Go ahead, Marcus.
He doesn't open on Olympus with the whole dialogue of...
No.
Wow.
No. To the contrary, he opens with one line on the screen that says that this takes place in a seemingly magic age. I'm not even sure what that means. In a seemingly magic age. And yet, like I was talking about my brother, and he's like, well, if you wanted to make this completely, quote, modern and materialistic, then, because the men actually turned into pigs with Circe.
So let's pause there, Louis. I'm talking with Dr. Louis Markos, professor of English at Houston Christian University. We are assessing the Odyssey movie, and we're also going to talk about the brilliance that comes out of the classical work, the book itself. Stay tuned, I'm Marcus Peter. Good afternoon and welcome back. I'm Markos. I'm talking with Dr. Louis Markos, Professor of English at Houston Christian University and authority on classics, C.S. Lewis, a lot of those books that I enjoy reading, and so Louis and I enjoy talking with each other about them. Now, Louis, I will say, so I didn't even look up the plot of the movie because I'm rather disconnected, I think, from what comes out in cinemas today. But I'm surprised. So I was talking with a friend over the break. Did the movie begin in Troy and then cut to Ithaca?
It kind of goes back and forth. Because again, we really, the Trojan horse is referenced briefly in the Odyssey, but the full story is really told in Book 2 of Virgil's Aeneid. Mm-hmm. It is mentioned when he goes to Sparta and visits Menelaus and Helen, and it is actually mentioned there briefly. But this one starts. We never get to see Achilles. We're at the very end of the war, and what Nolan does is he takes a character who appears in Book 2 of the Aeneid and helps out in tricking the Trojans. Okay, everybody knows the story of the Trojan horse, right? And a lot of people think, how could the Trojans be so stupid to bring that horse inside, right, that kind of thing. But in Virgil's telling, he doesn't make it up, but in Virgil's telling, Ulysses, Odysseus or Ulysses in Latin, he comes up with an extra trick. He gets a soldier named Sinon, Sinon, to work out the ultimate deception. So what happens is you've got the horse, it's sitting on the beach, and the Trojans are trying to decide what to do. Right? Shall we destroy it or what? And then all of a sudden, this Greek soldier named Sinon comes running towards the Trojans, saying, "Sanctuary, sanctuary, help me." He's all cut up, he's running, he's bound, and he says, "Oh, my people, please help me. Please give me sanctuary. The evil Ulysses has tried to sacrifice me to the gods." And the Trojans, who are good-hearted and sort of naive, take him in, right? And after they take him in, Sinon says, "I am so thankful that you have saved me. I now no longer have any allegiance to the Greeks, especially to the evil Ulysses, the deceiver. And so I'm going to tell you the trick. The reason Ulysses made this horse so big is so that you would burn it and therefore bring down the wrath of Poseidon. But I'm going to tell you now, take it into your city and you will have good luck." So Sinon is the ultimate deceiver. In fact, Dante puts Sinon in hell, very low down in hell, as a deceiver and handcuffs him to Potiphar's wife. Remember the one who lied and said that Joseph tried to rape her when it was the opposite, of course? Okay, so it is the perfect, and in fact, he says Ulysses is a deceiver, but all the words Sinon speaks are put in there by Ulysses. So this would be the perfect way for Nolan to begin with an understanding that the Trojan horse is a complete breakdown in deceit and what civilization is about. Okay. But for some reason, he only half borrows it. Sinon, played by the transgender dude, Sinon is there, and the Trojans spear him to the horse, and then Sinon says, "No, this was, this is a gift, and you should take it." But it skips the double layer of deceit in which Ulysses is actually guilty. And in this telling, Sinon doesn't even know that the Greeks are in the belly of the Troy, making him not only a wimp but stupid as well. And what I don't understand is, if he had followed Virgil, it would have been a perfect statement of what Christopher Nolan's trying to say, that the Trojan horse is the breakdown that leads to the fall of the Mycenaean Bronze Age. All of that sort of stuff would have worked better. And I don't really, most people don't even understand what's happening, because it turns out that Sinon is an Ithacan, and it looks like Sinon went in the place of Antinous, the leader of the suitors, but even that's unclear. I don't know. And then when Odysseus goes to hell, he meets Sinon again, and Sinon accuses him. But it doesn't even make any sense, Marcus, because Sinon is accusing Odysseus of getting her killed, but Sinon is killed before the Trojans even recognize the treachery. So it doesn't actually make any sense. It could have been a great way of bringing together Virgil and Dante and everybody else. And I don't know. I mean, we need to understand that the reason he put, the black Helen of Troy and the transgender, I don't think it was him trying to make a statement. You just have to understand that today you can't get an Oscar unless you tick the boxes. So I think he only did it because he wants to get an Oscar. I mean, I guess he's not happy enough for Oppenheimer. He got all the Oscars there, which was a good movie. But anyway, it's very, very odd. Right. But there's a missed opportunity there. So we never actually really see Odysseus as an evil deceiver. Because you need to understand, Marcus, we can't attack Nolan simply for re-mythologizing or reimagining Odysseus, because he is one of the most reimagined characters in literature. So in the Odyssey, he is noble, he wants to go home, he's a trickster, but he wants to... But in Greek mythology, and also in Roman, Virgil and Ovid, he is the ultimate Machiavellian villain. But then in Dante and in Alfred Lord Tennyson, who wrote the famous poem Ulysses that ends, to strive, to seek, to find, and not to yield, he is now a Victorian explorer. So we can't ding him just because he wants to rework the mythology of Odysseus, because he's been reworked again and again. The trouble is that it's not consistent, it's not clear, it's not exactly believable. By the end, again, that idea of PTSD kind of works. Maybe he's not ready to go home. And by the way, so I don't know if any of your listeners have actually seen a movie called The Return with Ralph Fiennes, which was pretty interesting. And Juliet, it's merely about him coming home. There's no gods, no magic at all. And at least this one kind of gives Ulysses and Penelope a sort of happy ending at the end. He goes off at the end, and a lot of people misunderstand that Nolan is trying to turn him into an adventurer a la Tennyson. But actually, if you listen to the plot carefully, he goes off in the end to finally and fully expiate his guilt that he's feeling so guilty for, which, again, that kind of works with Christianity. I'm not against that idea, but I don't know. It's just... To me, it's a movie that never really comes alive. You never feel drawn into the characters. It's almost like they're purposely off-putting you. And kind of like the old actors that try to underact each other. Everybody's underacting. Very odd. And then for some reason they made Eumaeus blind. I'm not sure why. And they also made him John Leguizamo, which didn't make any sense either. But anyway, he was okay.
So... just listening to you, I think it becomes very clear, too, that you're a man who's acquainted with the original epic poem, the Odyssey. So notwithstanding the consideration of, say, how Dante treats Odysseus, how Alfred Lord Tennyson, but even Virgil, how Virgil treats Odysseus. But if we consider just the Odyssey proper, right, how Homer treats Odysseus, the characters. The way I describe it is when I read a book, I have a relationship with the characters in that I have come to know them. Just from that perspective, I wonder if you could just broadly comment on movie making as a different kind of storytelling than book writing, or in this case, epic poetry writing, and what we ought to know moving into it.
That is a good question. And again, even though I am an English professor, I do not allow people to say to me as a knee-jerk reaction, the book was better. I get tired of those people. I always ask them, is there any adaptation of a book that you like? And they'll either give you nothing, or they'll say the BBC version of what's that called?
The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe.
Brideshead Revisited. Now, I absolutely love that Brideshead Revisited with Laurence Olivier, but it's like filming the book page for page, okay? And that's really not what film does. That's a TV movie anyway, very different than a film. So it's like, I'm sorry. I mean, I prefer the Laurence Olivier Wuthering Heights movie to the novel. I prefer the Grapes of Wrath with Henry Fonda. I prefer that to the novel. There are some that I prefer Rebecca the movie to the novel. There's so many great things, but we have to understand that they're a different medium. Now, the interesting thing about Odysseus in Homer's Odyssey is I think he is the character that we know best from all of ancient literature. From ancient history, we know Socrates best. From ancient literature, there's nobody we know better than Odysseus. Why? Because books 1, 2, 3, and 4 are only deal with Telemachus. We don't actually meet Odysseus in the book 5. And so in books 1 to 4, we hear about Odysseus. We see the impact he has on Penelope, on Telemachus, who doesn't even know him. So we're getting all ready to meet him. Then books 5, 6, 7, and 8, we see Odysseus and meet him on the island of Phaeacia with Calypso, all that sort of. And then books 9, 10, 11, and 12 are one big flashback where Odysseus tells his journeys, including Circe and Polyphemus the Cyclops. And so we are literally in his mind. It's a first-person flashback that makes us know him. Now, Christopher Nolan does a good job with the flashback. What he does, and you have to, the Odyssey is a great book, but it is a very episodic book.
That's right.
It's hard to film it, right? It's one episode after another, just like Voyage of the Dawn Treader was hard to film, too. Okay, so what he does, and it's interesting, he combines Calypso with the Lotus Eaters and with the Phaeacians, because the Phaeacians, with the little lovely daughter named Nausicaa, he tells them instead, he tells a story to Calypso, who's keeping him there by feeding him lotus to make him forget everything. But he's also eating lotus to make him forget his PTSD and his guilt. So narratively, I do think the Nolan movie works, and it finds a cinematic equivalent to what's happening in the epic. So I really don't have much against that. But again, we don't. Odysseus is just such a lovable rogue,
Yeah.
And it's really funny. They really want to clean him up. First of all, everybody has this idea of the double standard. Odysseus only sleeps with 2 women in his travels, and they are both goddesses. He doesn't really have a choice. He could, if he was.
So we're gonna have to stop there, Louis. The music is hitting us. It's a terrible place to end, but I've been enjoying a conversation with Dr. Louis Markos about the book versus the movie of the Odyssey. I hope that was helpful to you. Stay tuned. I'm Marcus Peter.